This episode is powered by NHL Sense Arena. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome back to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, joined by Mike Benelli and Christie Casciano-Burns. And today's guest is a great reminder of something that we speak about often on this show, that there is more than one path in hockey and more than one path to success or a future or however you want to define that word. Patrick Rissmiller is here today, and he grew up in Massachusetts, played at prep school. He developed his game at Holy Cross and worked his way to professional hockey despite going undrafted. And over the next 13 years of his life, he built a career that took him through the NHL, the AHL, and Europe, playing for organizations including, you've heard of some of these, the San Jose Sharks, the New York Rangers, the Atlanta Thrashers, kids look that one up if you don't know what it is anymore, and the Florida Panthers. Now, since retiring, he's continued to shape the game from a different perspective, spending 7 seasons as development coach with the New Jersey Devils before joining the Anaheim Ducks as an organization scout, right? So we're talking to a scout today. So I know that always perks your ears up at home when we're talking to a scout, NHL scout, right? So today we're going to talk about development, opportunity, patience, and what young players and families can learn from a career built one step at a time. Patrick, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be on.
I think Patrick, when we talk about development, we talk a lot on the show. Obviously, there's all different reiterations of what development is, and I think for most of our listeners, we have listeners from all over the world, but basically like on the East Coast of the United States, and definitely in the Northeast, right? I think you took what I would see as a traditional path. A player that went to prep school, a player that went to college, a player that then, obviously took that opportunity and played in the NHL. But can you just talk about how those steps, kind of built your career and the different things that helped you along the way because of the steps you made? I mean, the landscapes, and we can talk about this later, right? The landscape's definitely changing and shifting a little bit. But I think for a typical player in the Northeast, leaving high school, going to prep school, going to college, you just talk about how that shaped you as a hockey player.
Yeah, I think in my era, that was kind of the path, private school or even public school hockey. It really started because I was just in the local public school, but I was very young for my grade, and I grew very, very late. So it was a chance. I think my parents just they knew better than I, right, at that time. Just to get me in a little bit more of a structured environment, school-wise, academic-wise, a little more structure as far as study hall and things like that, and give me an opportunity to grow. I'm 6'4" now, but I think I was about 5'2" entering high school. I have an 11-year-old right now who's entering 6th grade next year, who is bigger now than when I was in 9th and 10th grade. So it kind of just delayed things a little bit for me and gave me a little time, I guess, in a sense, to catch up. And then at prep school, the colleges I was looking at was Holy Cross was at that time in the NESCAC. So it was NESCAC schools, Colby, Trinity, and those schools. And the coach, Paul Pearl at Holy Cross, was about the only one that was willing to kind of give me a little nudge into the school. And that's why I ended up there. It was really nothing more than that. It was just kind of the only one that really wanted to take me on, give me a chance. So I was, obviously thrilled and jumped on that opportunity.
Right. I think that's a great lesson for kids too. Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you, right?
Exactly. It was, I just remember going back a little wishy-washy with some of the coaches. Truth be told, I picked up lacrosse later in high school and was getting a little recruited for that too. But hockey was always my love, first love. And like you say, you just need one person or one champ to give you the opportunity. So, it was a great school, it was a great place, and I was excited to jump on board. They happened to be going Division I my freshman year, but that really had zero to do with my decision to go there. It was just the only place that was really wanting to have me on board.
We talk a lot about belief as not just a powerful tool, but a skill, right? in the sense that we just all said it about the coach's belief pays off. For all the coaches listening, that's a very powerful thing that you can give to your players, belief in them. I think sometimes, especially in youth hockey, we don't understand that enough, right? We're so focused on kind of good stuff, right? Development, trying to push the team forward. Sometimes just a kid knowing how much you believe in them can really help them believe in themselves. And Patrick, I imagine, we're going to talk about a lot of the things you do, but just from a strict belief standpoint, I don't know too many players that accomplish professional hockey without belief in themselves, correct? Like that's something you have to have if you want to succeed really in anything in life.
Right, without question. I mean, it's a life thing. It's beyond hockey. But I think when you go back, you talked about the youth stuff. It really is a lot of times just giving the kid a pat on the back and telling them they're doing great, even if they made a mistake, right? Because you want them to feel good about themselves. You want them to keep coming. And, the older you get, the more mature you get. And, it's helpful. I have 3 kids that play now. I'm very conscious of that. A 13-year-old daughter and 2 boys, 11 and 9. And no matter what team, it's always encouragement. I'll try to correct them for sure, but they're just young kids and you want them to feel good about themselves. And as you get older, it's important.
Yeah. That is important. From belief to development, Patrick, let's talk a little bit about that, especially for all the families who are just trying to figure things out right now. You've seen players develop probably, I would think, at every level of the game, obviously. So what do you think is the biggest misconception families have right now of how players actually improve?
Oh, boy. I think in today's world, it's that you have
question.
to be. Yeah, yes, exactly. I think, everybody thinks you got to do more and more and more and more, right? Especially the young ages. I always attribute it to like the kids my age, the ages of my kids. I just think that's a big misconception. And if they do A, B, and C, it's going to pave the way for college and spend X amount of dollars. And I just think it couldn't be more wrong. Every kid's going to develop at their own rate, at their own path. I'm a huge proponent of multi-sport, taking a break, riding a bike, whatever it is, playing the backyard, wiffle ball, going to the field. It all, for me, is kind of cross-training. But I just don't, there's no ingredients, there's no one way to do it. And again, the kids all develop at a different rate. And I do the scouting now and I watch, college hockey all year long. And there's kids that are 18, there's kids at 23, and they're still improving. They're still getting better. So I think patience is a big thing. Kids, raising kids, you have to be patient, right? They crawl before they walk before they run. They hit kindergarten and first grade. And I think in the sports world in general, everybody just thinks they can hit fast forward to it all. But there's no rush. There's no rush.
I do have a question just in regards to like and I don't want to go off kilter here, but just in regards to your ability to look and your job, right, is to project, is to look at a player, because everybody knows who the best players are. That's easy, right? Everybody goes, oh, that's the best player. There he is. He's always been the best player. And I think, for you as a scout now and somebody that's watching a player, can you just talk a little bit about how important it is then, like as you're projecting, as you're looking at a player, those core abilities, forget about personality and all that kind of stuff. Because sometimes we're just looking at the player, but you could see, right? You could see core structural ability of a player very early. And then when you find out, oh, they're probably the best baseball player in their town. They're the best lacrosse player. They're they do the most other things outside of the sport. They're not just the kid doing power skating, 4 days a week in the morning with a private coach. Can you just talk a little bit about how important that is for parents to understand that when you're projecting a player, you're probably not looking at the player at 14 and 15, right? You're saying, what's this kid going to look like at 23? Like that's really where it's going to matter for me as a professional.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm doing in college hockey. Obviously, the age range is big, 17, 18 up to, some teams 24, 25. But I think, when I'm watching it's, people can see how skilled a player is or how great a skater they are. Certainly you're watching, how their demeanor, how they carry themselves and how their work ethic is. But you'll have kids that are you could just kind of see maybe they're a little tall and a little lean. They're just kind of a little bit raw, scratching the surface, that type of stuff. But I think in the world of sports, I think generally your better athletes are the ones that eventually kind of rise to the top. You see that a lot. I know in football, and these guys they're not even playing organized football till 10th or 11th grade. In baseball, because I think the more you can do, right? It all is tied together, right? You play baseball, there's hand-eye. You play soccer, it's what are you doing without the ball? Same in hockey. What are you doing without the puck? So you're working on footwork and all those. So I think there's times you can see the athleticism. Times, I did some development work, and I had definitely came across some kids that were, I'd say, a little bit limited because their athleticism was a little bit limited.
Not
had a hard time adjusting and adapting to certain situations.
Right.
I was going to say, not to continue my reign as the king of the metaphor, but I always look at this like baking something, right? So it's like making a really good cake. You can overcook it. You can do too much to it and make it horrible. You can also not pay attention to it and undercook it. But the truth is this: when you're making a cake or you're baking anything, it takes a lot of love, takes time. You got to know what you're doing. You learn to know what you're doing by baking other things. The cake probably has other toppings. There's a lot of things you need to do to get that cake to be good. And here's the funny part. Speaking of scouting, the cake can look really good, but inside it can be complete crap if you didn't take your time and develop it the right way, right? So I always looked at this as the same way. And by the way, no two cakes are the same, right? Everyone does it a little bit differently. But the goal is you put a lot into it. A lot of different things need to be learned. A lot of different things need to go to make that thing as good as it can possibly be. I wrote down here too, I think when it comes to youth development specifically, there's a lot of times I see that people using life as a vehicle to grow a hockey player, and it's the other way around. It's hockey as a vehicle to grow you as a person. And I find that people that focus on it that way, and sports in general, right, tend to have a little bit more of an open mindset, bake better cakes for the sake of the metaphor here, right? And I think that Patrick, to your point, right, it's not one thing. And Mike, you said you can do power skating 4 days a week. I know kids who do that, and I know kids who take the summers off and they're better skaters, right? Not that I'm saying you shouldn't be getting the extra skating in, but I'm saying, like, you got to meet these kids where they're at, and that if you're putting their whole life into hockey at a young age, not only is burnout a massive potential result of that, but you're actually robbing them of the other experiences they could be having. So I think it's about making a well-rounded person first, and should they show extreme athleticism, then walk down the path, or I should say the opportunities that come with that, right? But it's like, let me ask you this, Pat, like in scouting, and I do not know the answer to this. How many athletes come through that were only hockey? It's all they focused on. That was the only thing that they did. Their parents were loaded, and they gave them every opportunity in hockey. Is there a percentage of players like that, or is it as you're saying?
I don't know the numbers. I think it's more like, certainly there's more of that than when I grew up.
Sure.
I still do think that some of these guys that might have got pretty invested in hockey are still excellent athletes. And if you give them a basketball, or you give them a bat or a sock, they can do some pretty good things, just having maybe not played as much.
Right.
I think most, many I've come across that maybe that it's not three sports, maybe it's hockey and lacrosse or whatnot. But I don't have a number. I just think there's more players that have done more as a child than like I did. I grew up in Massachusetts, and my family and I spent our summers in Maryland, so we weren't skating. But like you said, I think, you step back and why are the kids doing sports? It's not to go pro. It's not for a scholarship. It's for life lessons. It's for social reasons. It's for health, mental health, physical health. And I always go back to, they're kids. They have to have a childhood and enjoy it. And eventually, like, if you're good enough, you're going to be found, whether it's for college, whatever, or pros. Like it's, a different era. Nobody's hiding under rocks anymore. And it really, if you get into high school and you're playing wherever it is, whatever sport, a freshman year of high school, and you're just completely dominating, then you'll probably find another place to play. Right, that'll put you a little bit more on level, whatever sport it is.
I think I think
I
that's
think
why.
there's value in doing some extra, right? There's more availability that, the ice is down everywhere every year. If you want to dabble in a little something extra, there's nothing wrong with that. But to your point, I think there just gets to be burnout with the kids. It's just nonstop. And then they hit 13 or 14 and it's like, I don't really love this. I'm just kind of doing it. I'm going to try something different.
I think that's why hockey gets such a bad rap, and justifiably sometimes. But it's not like other field sports. Like you could take a really good, like I do a lot of lacrosse, right? I could take a really good soccer player that understands the game of soccer, and in 10th grade, I can turn that kid into an all-state lacrosse player. I mean, it's just if they're an athlete, right? If there's somebody like a basketball player, a football player, a soccer player, a lacrosse player, all these field sports that's why other parents look and they go, well, you people are nuts. Like, well, you're nuts too, right? But I think it's it's a different way because we can do different things with field sport kids and court kids than we can with hockey. The differentiator because of that, the skating and the ability to be able to skate. But paradoxically, right? It's well, you can't be a great skater unless you are really athletic and can do all these other things with your body. So if you try to do that too early, then you're stunting the player. But can you just talk a little bit about like when you I guess what I'm getting at is like you're as a development coach, right? And as you're getting into the world of working with, at this point, you're working with the best athletes in the world, basically. I mean, what are you really doing? I mean, you're already working with the best kids, right? So what are you doing to fix or tweak or help or support that player who's already the best player in the 1% kid already in the world of hockey?
Well, when I was working with doing the development stuff, I mean, it was really just, nuances. Where's your stick? What are you thinking? They're in a team environment, so they're practicing daily, but sometimes it's like another voice, and not tied to, when I did it, I wasn't tied to your playing time in the American League. I had no say really. It was let's try to help you all around so you can reach your goal of getting the NHL, which was video work, positional stuff, details, stick, skating, and you work a little bit some before practice or after, but sometimes it was just also just to be another voice. The coach says all these things, and hey, look, I don't have any say in what, how much you play or not playing, but let me help you out a little bit and see if we can help your game out a little bit, and you can, get to where you want to be.
I mean, is that where that total athlete then becomes so important, right? Because the ability, like if you're talking to a player at that level, they have to be able to mentally understand what you're even talking about space. And you could when you change like a player, like, okay, let's just use an example for one of our athletes. Like how are you playing off the wall? Like, what are you doing with your body to protect the puck, but then put the place? And that's the difference, right? In a player that might play in the NHL or not, is how are you working the wall and how are you protecting yourself and how are you making yourself available or giving the puck to somebody? Sometimes players might not learn that, right? Their whole career. They might just get to you. It's the first time a coach has the opportunity to take them out of a team format, but they have to be able to take that, right? They have to be able to understand what you're even saying to them, because it's not just pure skill that gets them where they are then.
Right. I mean, the best athletes are going to pick up on stuff pretty quickly, whether you're talking to them about it or they're going to learn. They're going to go through some experience once and know what to change and know what to do. I think going back even to the youth stuff, there's everything and across the board. I coach soccer in the fall with my kids, and it's so much individual skill work. It's constant, and that's not really the game as you progress, right? The world of hockey gets awfully small when you're out on the ice with 10 people that are 6'2" and above or 6 feet and above, right? So what are you doing in the smaller areas? And soccer is the same thing. The World Cup's on now, everyone's watching. Where are you without the ball? Where's the space? Where are you going with the ball? And that's why, it all helps growing up.
It does help growing up. I love the discussion on development. We can get back to that. But I need to hear about your career. What a career you have had. Okay. Let's talk about some of the most exciting moments you had in the NHL. Let's hear it.
Don't be shy on the overtime
Don't
goal,
be shy.
Patrick. We all saw that.
I want to hear it. I want to hear it. I'm so excited
Well,
that you're on the show with us.
To be honest, I grew up playing all the sports, soccer and hockey and baseball, really, and then I switched to lacrosse. But I always wanted to play in the NHL, just like most kids. Again, sophomore, junior high school, I was probably the smallest player out there. But as you get older, you start to see a little bit more, and you think maybe not. But I was at Holy Cross, and then, I was just happy to be playing college hockey. Um, at the tail end of my senior year, as someone said, one of the teams, the Sharks, were actually going to come watch me play. I thought, okay, great. And I don't know. Long story short, I thought I was going to go play in the East Coast for a year. And if I liked it, keep going. And if I didn't, I'd have to get a job, right? That's kind of the way it went. But went to camp and a tryout in San Jose, just a tryout and I was there for 2 weeks and earned a contract in the American League. So, as far as playing professionally, certainly making the team off a tryout was great. You always remember your first game. I was about as nervous as I could be, but played about 4 or 5 minutes, so it wasn't too bad. And just being around the guys, you always remember the playoff runs. Yes, I scored an overtime goal, but truth be told, it was after I turned the puck over and sat for about a period of overtime. So I paid the price. I turned the puck over thinking I was making the right play. So it took me a little time mentally to kind of wrap my head around it and kind of move forward. And then was fortunate to kind of redeem myself. But all the playoff runs were great. All the guys you meet along the way. There was definitely my first couple of games in the league and traveling on the road. I couldn't believe, the hotels, the planes, and it was, I don't know, it was kind of the best. I always say it was the best job I have ever had.
Oh, I would say, how about coach? Who is the best coach you ever had, and how did they influence you? And do you carry that with you to this day and try and pass it on to other kids?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the most memorable coaches was probably when I was about, I think, a peewee, a guy in community hockey, just how he talked to us, what he taught us. Maybe it was also the fact at that age you're a little bit more aware of, when you're 8, 9, 10, you're just having a good time. I had a coach in the American League, Roy Sommer, who spent a considerable amount of time with myself and teammates before or after practice working. I can honestly remember, 6'4" going into pro hockey, a little on the thin side at that time. Was working summer jobs, trying to lift around it, I guess, on my own, but not knowing how much really needed to go into it. But I think for the better part of a year after every practice, he grabbed me and a couple guys and we'd work on puck protection. And I said every day, pregame skate, practice, you name it. And then, that certainly helped because I certainly put that into my game as far as using my size and reach to my advantage. So he was certainly helped in my development.
I want to echo on these things, Patrick, because the coaches you're describing are great teachers, right? And I think the coaching is teaching. Now, again, disclaimer, I believe coaching at all levels is teaching. Obviously, at the professional ranks, coaching is a different job than it is when you volunteer at youth ranks or even collegiate ranks. And, I think there needs to be an understanding of that for the audience. But at the end of the day, coaching is teaching. And I love to teach. And one of the things that I realized, coaching at virtually every level. I mean, I've had coaching jobs where I'm paid to win. I've had coaching jobs where it's like, let's just get these 10-year-olds to get better at playing hockey. And I found that I love to teach. And you said something earlier that I want to pull a thread on for all the parents, kids, coaches listening out there about how the athletes that kind of learn the fastest tend to succeed. I think that's a major skill that we have to help our kids with, because sometimes there's pushback. A lot of kids don't want to make mistakes. The whole game is about capitalizing on mistakes. I always joke with my players that if this was baseball and we had an error stat in hockey, everyone would have about 200 a game, right? There's a reason we don't have that stat, and that our tactics are built to create mistakes. Our tactics are built to capitalize on mistakes. That's the game, and life's very much like that too. The other thing I wrote down here, and I love that you brought up like puck protection and things like that. And I'm really speaking to the coaches now, right? Never, ever assume your players know anything. All right. I learned this early on in my coaching career that, well, yeah, these guys are pros, right? They know this stuff. And it's like, I waited 4 or 5 games before realizing I don't think they know this stuff, and then started to teach it. And, what's funny is that they were so appreciative that I would take the time to teach them. And I apply that to all levels now, that if I see something I don't think's right, it might be a conversation first, but I look forward for the chance that, let me show you this. Let me explain to you how to lead with your stick. Let me talk to you about body positioning. You talked about the World Cup. I just sent my players on the national team that I coach this really amazing video of a defensive structure, and you can see all of the players moving in unison to defend an area, and they have lines connecting them. It's really cool. I love that type of stuff and sharing it, again, using multi-sport. So I just want to kind of, again, pull the thread on this again. It sounds like the coaches you admire were great teachers, right? And I'm sure that is applied to how you approach the game now too.
Yes, without question. I mean, the NHL is a business of winning, right? So you've got to win. Coaches, they have to win, players, and I lived, I consider myself kind of a fringe NHL guy, third or fourth line guy, where, those guys are probably more expendable, right, than, your $10 million first line center. So, you always had to be ready to play. You walked the line, and there were times where, hey, you know what, I didn't play well enough, and I sat the next game.
Right.
But that's the NHL, and that's where you've got to win. But you get paid a lot of money to win. And I think when you get down the American League, yes, they want to win, but that development often wins out over, right? You might lose the game in the American League because you're working on some kids to try to improve them on the penalty kill, and your penalty kill wasn't great that night, and you lost. But you're trying to develop players for the next level.
Right.
And then, I go down on the youth level. It's about development. It's not about winning games. You have no idea who's going to pan out. You have no idea who's going to continue to play. And your job, for me, I do it the same as a teacher. If you have, 15, 10-year-olds, you've got to develop all of them.
Right.
And you can't develop them by having a power play unit and a penalty kill unit. And I do use the teaching analogy. I'm not a teacher by trade, but when you send your kid to 5th grade, the teacher teaches the 20 kids. It doesn't just pull the 10 best kids and say, we're going to work with you in math, and everyone else you got to figure out on your own. It's exactly how I see it. So when I work with all the kids, I try to help them all out. I do think I have a lot to share with them, but there's a time and a place. A mite and a squirt and a peewee is certainly a lot different than a high school and a college player. But I think even USA, they've done a good job with some of that small area stuff. That's going to teach you some of the hockey sense, the puck protection, the agility, the skating, the stick handling, reading the play, and it's all kind of right there without having to get spend hours trying to practice playing, right? But I think every year, my daughter is 13, so I've given them a little bit more, the teams I've coached, every year, depending on what level they're at. But it still has to be fun. You still have to work with all of the kids.
I think that's.
We all have trophies in our room. I get it, and it's fun when you're a kid, but when you look back on it, you're like, I don't really it's not that important.
I think that's why it's so important. I mean, we talked on this show ad nauseum about the communication to parents and setting expectations and understanding. Like I think there's a core group of people that care, to say, well, my kid's the best player on the team. I just want him to be with all the other best players. I don't care about the other players' development. But I think from your perspective, Patrick, especially seeing in your community, kids that you would never imagine. You look at them 7 and 8 year olds, you're like, oh my God, I'm barely putting this kid on a team right now. And all of a sudden they're 16 years old, 17, and they're the best player on the high school team. And I think it's just that the ability to wait and the ability to just, teach everyone. Is that, what are some of the things you do as a coach? Notwithstanding the fact that you play in the NHL and people should just listen to you, right? But it's still, you're selling these parents all the time on the fact that there is no reason to rush to have a 50-0 season at 9 years old, because it doesn't matter at all. But how do you tell that to a parent that is all they know is 9-year-old hockey, right? How do you convince them that it doesn't matter later on? It's fun and it's important, looks great on Facebook, but it really doesn't matter.
Right. And I try to share my thoughts or my education or what my knowledge with plenty of people. I don't know everything. I'm well aware of that, but this fall, it's be my 25th year between playing and scouting and development. So I'm 47. So more than half of my life at the professional level. I do like to think I have some knowledge of it. Um, but I do generally, even when I coach soccer, is try to set expectations with parents early. Like everybody's going to play equal. I'm here to try to help all of them, and we're going to try to encourage all of them. Um, I think there's sometimes, sure, if your kid's out there scoring 7 goals a game, then they probably need to move up a level or to another program. But if they're scoring, a couple goals a game, be it soccer or hockey, that's excellent. But you they're kind of dominating, which is healthy for them. But they're not, like I said, if you're playing a game, you score 7, 8 goals, it's probably too easy, right? It's too much. But if you're very successful, that's what you want. I work closely with Andrew Alberts in our little community program, and we try to stress to the parents, we're looking to put your child at the appropriate level, whether that's the 1 team, the 2 team, or the 3 team, it doesn't matter, but we want them to succeed, meaning have a puck touch, score a goal, make new friends, get along in the locker room, so that they continue to play, because that's what you need. You get up to 13, the statistics are pretty sad about the 7 out of 10 quitting sports. But in the moment, I think, the kids are excited. I like, they're in the playoffs. There's a little bit the kids are a little nervous maybe, and that's a healthy little environment in that little snippet. But, we lose a game. I mean, a lot of times, like the conversation on the way home for my kids is about anything but.
Right.
They never talk about. I don't bring it up on the way home. It might be about whatever. They saw a fancy car on the road. I mean, they're kids.
Right. Let's go for some ice cream. Patrick, have you ever coached your kids, your own kids? Were you ever a coach on their teams, or did you back away from that?
No, I coach all of them. I've coached all of them in soccer at one point. I've backed off a little bit. And then my kids, I have been involved throughout their 9, 11, and 13. But yes, at this stage, sometimes taking a little bit less of a role like than the head coach, just because I want them to be coached by other kids. In the springtime, they play baseball, softball. My daughter did lacrosse, and I don't coach at all for that. A lot of that is so I can have a break, but a lot of it is let's put them out. They can be coached by somebody else, because we all do it differently, right? And it's healthy.
I respect that. I really do, because I'm sure you get pressured too with all your experience to, hey, we've got a natural born head coach here. Let's lean on him. So I respect that you said, you know what? You should learn from someone else. I'm curious what you think, because you said earlier that the landscape is really changing for youth hockey. What excites you most about young players today? What are you seeing that's changing?
Well, I'll go back just a step. I love coaching the kids. I love coaching any kids. It's kind of, hockey. I love the game of hockey. I watch it all winter, but coaching the kids for me is the best, whether it's on the soccer field or hockey. But, these days the kids are certainly more talented at a younger age, which is kind of fun, right? There's a lot of skill, skating and things like that. But, the landscape has totally changed. There's too many teams. There's too many programs. Everything's completely diluted. And then people are just, I got to jump from team to team. That stuff bothers me. But especially like hockey, checking comes into play. It used to be Pee-wee, now it's Bantam. It's kind of a pretty good equalizer, because you have kids just naturally don't want to be a part of it. And then, everyone's going to grow, mature, but, definitely more skilled and talented at younger ages than when I grew up.
We talk about this a lot, how when we divide youth hockey, we always say kind of 12 and under and 12 and up, because when hitting comes into the game, it's a different game. It's a totally different game. And we tell the young parents all the time that if your kid is excelling at the 12 and under range, that it's fantastic. Like it's not a negative thing, but when hitting comes in, the game changes. All right. And that's why you see sometimes, I didn't even like to call them late bloomers. I call it just late adopters, right? That they see the game a different way because of the skill set of hitting. Another thing that evolves along the way, Patrick, we talked earlier about winning and what winning means. And it's funny because like I'm a very fierce competitor, and I think people know that about me. And I've been asked, like, how do you deal with like 10U hockey with, your hatred of losing? And I tell them I change what the win is. You said earlier about pro coaches are paid to win. That is correct. At youth hockey, it's the parents think the coaches are paid to win. First off, we're not paid. Second of all, winning the game in youth hockey cannot be the be all end all of it. It's great to win. I love when we win. I love it for the kids. But the win as the coach is, as you said, Patrick, that they're learning something, right? And that's why it's so important, especially for the parents listening. I have the same when it's late in a youth game and it's a 1-goal game or a 2-goal game. Yeah, of course I'm wanting to win that game, right? But if that trumps the development structure, I don't think I'm coaching at that point anymore, right? I'm just trying to win a game to appease other people, right? So it's a thin line. It's not easy. And I think as you get older, that becomes more and more pertinent, right? In the sense of like, if you're in a prep school, it's not so much that you have to win, like you're paid to win, but like winning now becomes part of the skill set, the yearning to win, the teaching them how to become a winner, how to become a champion. That comes later on. And again, like that's part of the professional development. I don't know where I'm going with this other than the fact that you can have multiple wins. And I think when we approach youth hockey, the win is like you said, it's development. These kids are getting better. I don't want one kid to come out of my team that's fantastic. I want them all to be in a position to succeed at whatever the next step is for them, whether that's with me or the next age group. I just think that as coaches, we need to talk more with each other about what that means. I always pose this question: no matter what age you're coaching, have you spoken to the coach at the age group above you to talk about what they look for at that age group? I just don't see those conversations happening. And I don't understand how we're going to provide effective development, at least in our programs, if I don't know what the U12 coach wants after U10 or the U14 wants after U12. Like, there's got to be some understanding of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd tell the parents early on, I want to win every game. I'm very competitive. I think that was part of what helped me get to where I did. But it's not coming at the expense of the development of the kids.
Right.
And 12, I would even say 14U, like you got to develop all of them. Sure. But I guess sometimes my perspective is different than the average person because I did play at the highest level. But, I watch my kids. I don't get nervous. I don't get tense. I'm not yelling. I want my kids to learn. I want to win every game. But, it's more important to me that everybody, all this, play equal. Like, it's 12U and you're up by a goal. Like, I still won't change who goes out there. It's whoever's next because that's how they're going to learn, If you have 3 or 4 kids that never get out there on the power play at 10U, you're not helping them. Right.
Well, I also think that parents, many parents, and I don't want to say most, but many, don't appreciate and understand, like when you're a professional athlete or a professional coach or somebody who loves watching players develop, you're also on the bench saying, wow, I can feel a dynamic of this kid going out here and like to Lee's point, finding your wins. Like sometimes you could put a player out there with a minute left in the game and they don't get scored on. That's a win. Yeah. Like a player that you would never, like everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe they're putting this kid out there. And then it's amazing when you see young athletes rally around that kid and support that player. That player comes off. You literally might have just changed that player's whole course of their whole life. I mean, I know it's, right. I don't want to get too grand, but it really makes a big difference when you get an opportunity for a kid like me. I'm the guy who says, well, why would I come to practice every day and bust my ass to play against you, Patrick, if I'm never going to get a chance to play? Like, if I know I'm never going to get on the bench, why don't I even come here? And without that player coming every day, I can't get better. So parents have to understand, like, the coach's job in managing these kids is to make sure that everybody wants to come and compete. And with that competition, your player will get better and they'll learn something. And at the same time, all these other kids that, yes, they're not going to be the kid you put on thinking you're going to score a big goal, but somtions not giving up a big goal is the victory. I
want to add one more thing to this, Mike. I want to add one more thing to this, and the Patrick, want your response to this is that and I've seen this a lot. It's late in the game, 1-goal game, or you're on special teams. Put the 5 best kids out there. Just throw them out there. I have seen that collapse on itself more than I have seen it work.
Right.
All right. Because they don't normally play together. They're typically all, quote unquote stars. They don't know what to do to pass the puck. They don't know how to have positioning. So you throw your 5 best skaters out. It's what the parents want to, and you get scored on or worse, right? Like it's just a complete killer in terms of confidence. Whereas if you had maybe stayed constructed, like maybe there's a line you want to put out. I do understand that. But like just this, it's a power play. Throw the best players out. It's a penalty kill. Throw the best players out. No. And again, I'll use myself as an example one more time that when I started late, but I could skate. That was my skill set. So they would never put me on a power play. But you know what my coach did? He put me on the penalty kill, right? And I was really good at that. But if he never just tried me out there, I never would have discovered that. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's like, just throw the best players.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Lee, I don't think my kids have been on a team where that didn't happen. Honestly,
it's
all the time. Patrick, let's talk about that.
I roll my eyes on the bench when coaches do that.
To say to that is, one, my kids play baseball. I love baseball. And I probably love baseball now for having watched my kids than I did when I was a kid. But that's like one of the best parts is Little League is almost like a rite of passage. And you have these kids, and nothing wrong with it, not very athletic, probably won't play beyond Little League, whatever, all year. And my kids still talk about it to a day, about an instance where not one hit this kid all year long, nothing. And then the last game of the year, he made a hit and tied it up. And the dugout was going crazy. And that's all they talked about for 2 years. Not the win, not how many hits whoever had. It was that one kid. So like you said, changing the trajectory of somebody's life. That's the self-esteem and the confidence thing. And then another to that point was, so when I was playing professionally, the American League, more of a power play, kind of a point producer, offensive guy. Wasn't very good defensively when I first started. So the coach wanted me to be a center at 6'4". I was coming in, I was mostly played wing. They tried me, whatever. So, I'd chase the puck around, was never really taught, never really worked, So it took me a while to get the defensive structure. So for a while in the American League, if we're up where I go, and we didn't win a ton of games in my first couple of years in the American League, right? 22 out of 80 my first year. So, it was a long season as far as wins and losses. And then we'd be up by a goal, 10 minutes left. I wasn't going to play. I knew why I wasn't going to play, because I wasn't going to be out there because I was a liability at the time. Fast forward a couple of years, so I pretty much play left wing. I'm in the NHL. Ron Wilson was the coach in San Jose. I'm supposed to be a couple game call up and then be sent down. Then someone gets sick, and then someone's wife is pregnant. The next thing you know, I'm playing, and one day he goes, "Oh, you play right wing?" Yes, I play right wing. I probably had played 2 games at right wing. You kill penalties? Yep, no problem. I never killed a penalty. I was just like, I wanted to play. I'll play wherever you want me to play. Turns out that became my thing. Like in the NHL, I was 3rd, 4th line winger, kill penalties. But I hadn't really spent much time in it. So to your point of, you got to give kids chances. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what's going to transpire.
Well, the other side of what you just said that we have to comment on is, I do that. I do that. Kids, parents, how many of your kids are walking in? I'm a center. I've got to play center. Or even I am a left defenseman. Kids, you play everything, all right? You want the answer? You play everything. Go ahead, Patrick.
Never. And hockey's so interchangeable. I try to say that too. Well, you're the center off the face-off, but you were the first on the forecheck, and now you're the last in the back check. So therefore, you're not the center anymore. You're the weak side winger, whatever that may be.
Right.
So learning.
Here's another one too, and we'll lean into your scouting experience here, but I'll start with the youth level. When I'm watching games, I have seen this. I have seen the puck in a breakout go from the D to the wing, and then the wing, just without thinking, throw it to the middle where the center is supposed to be, because that's exactly what they were taught to do. That's what a winger does. You get the puck on the boards and you throw it to the center. That is one of 50 things a wing may do on the boards, or the player on the boards. But the truth is, and Mike, you and I talk about this, Christie, you've heard it like every episode, about teaching decision-making and not teaching just do this because I told you to do it. All right. Modern hockey is positionless. I'm saying that wrong, but you all know what I'm trying to say. Positionless. Anyway. And yes, you have your face-off positions, and then the game flows after that. So again, you should be teaching these kids, and kids, you should be learning lots of different decision-making skills, lots of different positions. I always joke, I've said on the show before, you want to be a great winger? Play defense. You want to play a great defenseman? Play center. Play the different positions. You're going to learn a lot more about the game doing that. I'd put you all in goal every game if I could. Maybe not all of you, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the more versatile you are, the better off you are. Because,
Right.
if you're a left winger, whatever, and then, there's some team, whatever, and they need a right winger, or your team needs a right winger, and you have these kids like, I can't do it. And you're like, I can. Well, guess what? Now you get double the shifts.
Right.
I mean, imagine you're a player growing up and you play right wing, right? And you're right winger. You get to high school and there's 7 right wingers, and you never understood that you might play D. What are you going to just sit the bench for 4 years? I mean,
Exactly.
like at some point you'd have to be able to say, listen, I can do anything you ask me to do. That's what's great about like hockey is so different, right? I mean, it's just a great opportunity where, like, even in football, you can't just play everything. Like you can't be a lineman if you're a running back or you're a quarterback. Like there's certain things that your body is made to be able to do. In hockey, we see it today, the modern game, right, Patrick? You work with these guys every day. There are 6'5" guys and there's 5'8" guys, and they all can play the same role interchangeably outside of goalie. I get it, but just the opportunity, if you're skilled and smart and tough and can be versatile enough to play within a certain role in a certain system, hockey enables you to play everywhere. And I think the players, I used to joke around a lot with the younger kids when they'd come for tryouts. I'm like, well, what position you play? Well, I'm a centerman. Okay, we have 5 centermen. So are you out? Does that mean I'm cutting you? Because I have no other room for you. And I think just the player that can say, Coach, I know it's cliche, but it's true. Coach, where do you want me? Where do you want me to play? I will excel in that position. And guess what? The earlier you do that, parents, the earlier you allow a coach to experiment with your kid, the quicker they learn where they're really suited to play later on when it actually matters.
Well,
right. I mean, what are you going to, right. You say like you get to the higher levels and there's 4 or 5 centermen and they're better than you. What are you going to do? Not play? Or what if you could play wing? Now they only have 3 wingers and you could be the 4th winger. I said to you, by teaching, it's why when they go to school, they work on all the subjects. Right. If the teacher came in and said, you're only doing math from September till June, people would freak out. But we're only going to play hockey and you're only going to play left wing for 12 months a year. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I love and then Darlene being a great example, like a kid like that who grew up as a winger his whole life, right? And all of a sudden he's the best defenseman in the league. Like I said, it's just like, it's a matter of, can you play hockey? Can you skate? Can you pivot? Can you turn? Can you shoot? Can you pass? All these kind of things I think are really what sets hockey apart from other positions or other sports. And your position, that positionless hockey, it's always been there. It's just a matter of now we're letting it be a little more undefined.
Right. It's so important for kids to learn how to pivot at an early age. Also, hockey sense so important, right, Patrick? And I'm curious, when you're scouting, what are the qualities that you look for that separate a good prospect from an elite prospect?
Well, your skating and skill. I mean, everyone, and the hockey sense is very important, and that ties into what we just talked about. With, are you reading, reacting, right? Are you gonna, go where the puck is gonna go, or are you going where it was? Or if you're the center and you're interchangeable, that's part of the hockey sense. Other things would be character, competitiveness. You're not going to play in the NHL if you're not a very competitive kid, because you're going to be in the American League. That's where everyone wants to be. And every team, has, I guess we'll do it a little differently, but can you skate? And I think the skating thing for me, it's not necessarily like, are you real fast or powerful? Obviously that helps, but there's plenty of guys in the NHL that are like, I would say, I term them like sufficient skaters, right? Mm-hmm. I play with guys that, Joe Pavelski I play with, not the fastest, never was, but very, very smart, right? And I think that can help if you have good hockey sense, it can help compensate for some of the skating stuff. But yes, it's a fast game. It's not getting any slower, but not everyone in the NHL is like a burner, right? So you got to find out ways to make up for it in other ways, right? Maybe you're an elite shooter. Maybe you're an elite skater, maybe your hockey sense, or maybe your skill, or maybe you're an elite competitor that helps balance off some of the other deficiencies. I think, they in the NHL, like you're doing the draft, all these kids have deficiencies, right? And it's trying to balance it and see and try to project where you think somebody has the most upside, right? Especially in the later rounds. Or, I watch the college for free agents. Of course, there's kids out there and you're like, well, skating's not great, but elite sense or whatever it is. And you're trying to balance it off and see if it might fit within your organization.
Yeah, the cool thing about hockey is, as fast as you want to go, there is a board at the end of the game. You're not sprinting down a river, right? So at some point you have to be able to turn and pivot and pass and make a play. So I think your point of, and Lee actually said this. It was funny. He was I heard him talking to his kids, his national program, and talking about like you got to be you have to get there fast, but don't be quick, or vice versa. Like you don't it's great to be quick and fast. But you have to understand, like, when you're, it doesn't always mean 100 miles per hour. It's like you got to make a decision quickly and you got to be fast, but then you got to use that in the right area for the game, because going and skating as fast as you can to the puck and then, and then not be able to do anything with it, it doesn't help you in the game of hockey.
Yeah, we were talking about speed versus timing.
Yeah.
Right. And then the speed of timing, which is also hockey IQ. And teaching these athletes, you got to learn that side of the game. Again, going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, just about playing other positions and how it applies to this. I find a lot of times kids say, well, I'm a left wing. And I'll say, well, why are you a left wing? And they'll tell me an issue in their game. Well, I'm not good at catching the puck on this side. And look, I don't tease them at that. I say, hey, look, I love that that's something you need to get better at. Why don't we work on that instead of ignoring it? Right. And Patrick, you said it too. And this is the reality of pro hockey is, when you get to pro hockey, you are a specialist in some form. Right. It doesn't mean you can't play at other positions or anything like that. But like, I remember, in Ovechkin's early years, and again, he's probably not the best example for purposes of youth hockey, but, he had coaches early on that were trying to fit him into a system. And it wasn't until they kind of let him loose and let him play the way he wanted to play that he really exploded. He was always a great scorer. Don't get me wrong. But adversely too, when they won the cup, he was told, hey, you got to play a little more defense, right? You got to get back. It's probably his best defensive season ever. Versatility matters. And kids, coaches, youth coaches, parents, you got to let your kids try all the things out, because not only will it help them, it will uncover things, right? If your kid can't catch a pass on their backhand, don't ignore that. Get them good at doing it. Coaches, we can teach that. We want to teach the kids that. Trust me, we want your kids to be able to catch a pass without getting frustrated right now. I want nothing more than all your kids to be able to catch a pass. All right, we'll change the whole game for our team.
I think Patrick can appreciate this the most, right? That I was working with a kid the other day in lacrosse, actually. Great righty, just shooting righty, catching righty, shooting righty. So I'm for an hour for after practice, we worked just on lefty, and he was so upset. He's like, I can't play lefty. I'm not good at lefty. I go, yes, but you're great. And this kid's 10 years old. So at 10, he can just go down the field as a right. He scores every single time. So his success factor is off the charts. Every parent loves it. But what's my job as a coach and a developer? My job is to say, well, I want to see you play when you're 16. And if you can't shoot lefty and righty or handle the ball on both sides, you are no longer playing lacrosse. Right. You're just a kid that runs down the field. And I think that's where as hockey players, we see all those things. And when they get to you, Patrick, the ability, and let's go right back to like that kid being a better athlete, right? Yes, the kid can do all of these things, but your job is how do you put them now in a place where they could be versatile for the team that you're working with them on? Like, how can you say, well, yeah, this player here, but guess what? Nobody else sees this. This is my job, right? That's what I love about scouting. It's like you're seeing something in a player. Say, if I could take this player and put him here and teach him this player now becomes somebody else that nobody else sees. And isn't that really the true ability of a developer and a scout to say, I'm seeing something in a kid that nobody else is seeing, And that's like AI can't do that, right?
Yeah, and scouting is interesting too, is because we can all see the same player and all have different opinions, right?
Right.
It's subjective, and he's a good skater, he's not a great skater, he's whatever it is. But yes, versatility, and then right, where do you see that player? And then it's also up to the player to decide, like, are you okay being a fourth line winger and playing on the power play or penalty kill, sorry, right? Where you've scored your whole life, but you know what? These guys are better than you. That's reality, right? There's only those one, the elite of the elite, those McDavids, Ovechkins, like the rest of them. You got to kind of find where your role is on the team, and a lot of kids are not. I mean, I dealt with it, and I played with guys. They're just not willing to accept it. They want to score goals, and they can't see them doing anything else. But there's a difference in making a lot of money, but to kill, or maybe what? There's guys that may not play much, but also all of a sudden they're the best face-off player on the team. Well, guess what? Now they're on the fourth line and they're out there taking every important draw. So now their minutes went from 6-7 minutes to the 11 or 12 minutes because they're so valuable. The youth levels, everybody's got to play and everyone's got to have fun so they can play. And when you get up into those high levels, is you have to find where your role is on the team, be a piece to the puzzle if you want to play.
We got to shout out our co-host Haley Scamora too here, Patrick, because at the start of last season, she was a 13th forward and she knew it both on Team USA and somewhat on her PWHL team. And by the end of the Olympics, she was getting key minutes. At the end of her PWHL season with Montreal, where they just won the Walter Cup, she was out there at every major moment in the game. And it was because of her versatility. I think she played every forward position. She was on multiple lines. She was just willing to do the job that was put in front of her. And she's been insanely rewarded for it. I don't just mean trophies, right? I mean, with ice time and things like that. But that's her mindset. So the point I'm making, and Patrick, you're making it too. Parents, we have to help our kids develop that mindset, right? If you're telling your kid you should be here, you got to be careful with that statement. All right. Or if you're telling your kid, here's one I've heard before, which blows my mind. Well, coach keeps putting you in that position. He's not putting you in a position to succeed. Well, wait a minute. By teaching him that other position or her that other position, I am putting your kid in a position to succeed. As Patrick just said, you're not willing to accept the position that I'm putting your kid in. You're teaching them to not have a growth mindset. And I'm not saying everything we do is correct, parents. All right. Coaches make mistakes like anybody else. All right. But if your kid is, one last final example. Mike was there for this. This popped in my head. At this training camp I just ran, we had a player that I mistakenly put on offense. All right. I just designated her at the wrong position. And she went out there for 2 periods and played offense and was pretty good. Right. And then she went to Mike, who was coaching that bench, and said, I played defense. She goes, I had no idea. And then we put her on defense. She was fantastic on defense. But man, when I had my one-on-one with her, I told her, I was pretty impressed. The fact that I made that mistake. You didn't say a word till the second period, and you excelled. I said, yeah, when we put you on D, it was obvious that's your position. But now I know how versatile that player stood out to me because of a mistake that I made, right? Just because she was willing to do it. So I think that's important. And this was a camp where you needed to be noticed, right? So again, I'm just using my own personal experience.
Well, and on top of it all, it wasn't like, oh, I'm not playing this position.
Right.
There was never, there wasn't even a discussion about it. Like it was kind of like, coach, I just want to let you know something. Like this is 40 minutes into the game.
Right.
She's like, I just want to let you know something. I'm in the wrong position. I'm like, well, you could have fooled me. I mean,
nobody noticed.
But I think that's that to me, that's coaching. That's like looking and saying and in the same breath, like there's players you're like a parent will debate me all the time. Like my son is a defenseman. My son's a defenseman. I'm like, who is telling you he's a defenseman? The guy that's a plumber for 40 years and never played hockey in his life. Like your son is not a defenseman. I know he maybe feels good there. It's like back in the day, right? When you put a kid in football and you made him a nose tackle because he was the biggest, heaviest kid. And they're like, yeah, but have you seen his parents? His parents look like Adonis 1 and Adonis 2. Like, what? This kid's going to be a beast when he's 16. Put him in a skilled position because that's where you're really going to want him later in life. And I think a lot of us as coaches, sometimes we going right back to what Lee was saying about the communication from level to level. Sometimes we look at a kid and we don't look and project and say, yeah, the kid looks like this now, but wow, he really has potential to be this. Right. And we put him in these positions that are placating them today, but they're not. It's not helping them develop for tomorrow. And that to me is like that's very frustrating on my end. But again, it's Patrick's show, so sorry.
I know, no. You know what? Also, I would tie that all into is how be a great teammate. If you're a great teammate, and it's something I've harped on with my kids. Is being coachable, being a great teammate, competing, and having fun. Because if you're a great teammate, the team comes and you're going to do what's best for the team, right? Yeah. And that helps. I mean, that's life. That's life, right? Go to any office or work. Like, you have to be a good teammate. And people want to be around you, and people want you on their team, right? Yeah, you might not have as much ability, but a coach's dream. So you're a great teammate. Yeah, you're a left winger, but you know what? We're short right wingers. Hey, I'll play right wing today, no problem. And people appreciate it.
We did a really popular episode called 3 Things You Should Say to Your Kids Before They Step on the Ice. And if there was a 4th thing, by the way, parents, go listen to that episode if you want to hear the 3 things. No spoilers here. But if there was a 4th thing, it would be what you just said, is really saying, hey, be a great teammate today. We don't tell our kids that enough as coaches and parents. In fact, I think sometimes parents were giving them information maybe detrimental to that. Go out there and make sure you get your ice time today. Be a great teammate is important. And I'll tell you right now, at every level, whether you're playing or not, being a great teammate pays off. Yeah. All right. And this isn't me being rah. All right. I'm in a position where I coach players sometimes that get very little ice time. And I talk to them. This is the hardest position on the team. You got to be the best teammate on the bench because your teammates need you to be that. Right. It's important. So if I could add a 4th thing to that, it's be the best teammate possible.
Yeah.
Patrick,
you asked some of those guys
go ahead.
In the NHL too, like, the game has changed with some of those like tough guys that played 4 or 5 minutes a night that literally were to fight. And they'll tell you they're some of the best teammates they've ever had.
Right.
And selfless.
And they're called, and they when they're called upon, they perform what they were called upon to do. And I think that's where, like, this is episode 4, right, that we can do. But I think it's all about like your role. And again, there aren't roles for players really at 8 and 9 and 10, but there are roles. And the players that are able to accept the role, you said it earlier, Patrick, like a kid could come up and your job is like, I gotta just convince this kid, like, he's never going to play on this team because I don't need another right wing second line player. We have 20 of those kids. So if you want to find your space in the NHL, you now have to be a different person, and not only be a different person, accept that that's the role, because your body language and the way you're on the bench and the way your teammates see you, like those guys. And, I don't want to go down too far a road here just with your current organization, but like, aren't those like the little nuances between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs is not always the top 2 lines. It's all those other support people in there and that buy-in and the opportunity for them to say, we have a common goal and we want to get here. And can you just talk a little bit in your recent experience, like those little tweaks in personnel, how that makes a team so much different than a team the previous year?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see that a lot every year in the NHL and the playoffs is, obviously you have your stars and they produce all year and everyone knows, but it's right. Who's going to step up? And the playoffs, the games get tighter, they get more physical, right? That's just the nature of the game. It ramps up the intensity and everything. But, your guys on the 3rd, 4th line, like those are the guys you start to chip in, and then they start talking about it. And you're like, well, also these are the guys that are playing that way all year because that's how they have to play if they want to keep playing, right? They're not going to score 30 goals and 70-something points, but they find ways to chip in. And it could be a block shot, right? They're out and they just keep blocking shots. I mean, there's just different, you need all of that. Of course, you need some luck and you need some health and all that stuff. But those are the guys, I think, it's like that gets magnified in the playoffs because people are watching it much closer. I always say like the same like baseball. You watch game number 75 in that era at the third base and 2-run scores, and that's the game, and no one thinks of it. But that same play happens in the best of 7 series in the playoffs, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh!" Right? Everything gets amplified, magnified.
Yeah, you're Bill Buckner.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Exactly.
I was just thinking that too, Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
Patrick, we're getting a little short on time here, but you said something really early in the episode. I have to pull the string on. Did you say you went from 5'2" to 6'4" in a few years?
Yeah. I'm 6'4", and that's what but I was 5'2" and probably 90 pounds going into ninth grade.
How much equipment did you go through?
I don't know. I have a lot of siblings, so it was all hand-me-downs.
Oh, thank goodness for your.
And I don't remember exactly where it came in, but it was after my junior year of high school that I really start to grow. I can tell you there was conversations with the doctor about trying to, growth spurts and all that on at that time.
That's a jump,
I grew
buddy.
very late. But
well, needless to say, you didn't do sweater fittings in April, I guess.
No.
So
we do that now.
I was just always, smallest guy. That's and I think it's helped me with my own kids and just in general. And I feel like I probably have the most patience in the world with them in their development. My daughter does a million different things. She's done lacrosse. She did softball. She did intramural track this spring. She's done soccer. And I'm just like, because she's also going in 8th grade. I'm well aware at 9th grade, you really do have to kind of start picking. But I also think when you hit high school, you start practicing 4 or 5 days a week along with those games. So then that's where a lot of growth will happen.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, this has been a tremendous episode. We're going to ask you to join us on a quick ride to the rink again after this one for the kids. And parents, just if you're still listening, I'm going to definitely play for the kids. Like, this is an NHL scout, but we're going to talk about stuff that actually matters for them. So make sure you stick around for that one. But Christie, Mike, any final things before I close this out?
Well, we forgot to ask him what advice he would give to younger self. We asked that of all of our guests, and I think it'd be really interesting to hear from you, Patrick. If you could look back at 12-year-old Patrick Rissmiller and give yourself some advice, what would you tell yourself, your younger self?
Probably be more confident. I think I'm a pretty low-key person, and just always have been. I think, and I say that because as it transpired over and like I got called up to the end, just be more confident in yourself. I think it would have maybe helped me a little bit at the higher levels, because, you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm really here. But, the young age, I know I love playing all the sports. But I was never a rah-rah vocal person. I'm a pretty good athlete, but I think being more confident. And I don't mean that in a terrible way. Quiet kid. I see it in my own kids. You just believe in yourself.
I love that. And that's what I said as soon as I saw you. Oh my gosh, he's really here. I said that to myself. He's really here. He's on our show. What a thrill. Yeah. Thank you so much, Patrick.
It's great.
Really appreciate you.
Patrick, I'll close it by saying you were very rah-rah vocal and confident on the show today, which we appreciate. Well, so you've got a future podcast host.
Strong opinions about it all because I see it in all the sports. It's all the youth sports, and I think it's really sad. There's just too many kids that are quitting too early. Too many people focused on the wrong things and win at all costs at a young age, and you're just driving it out. And as somebody who grew late and things developed and happened very late, there's less room for the likes of me now because people are weeding people out so early. I mean, that's right. You're going to get cut from this. You're too small. You're not this. You're not. We got to win. We got and it's cutting the kids and ending things prematurely for too many people.
Well, I'll close by saying this, Patrick. I agree with you. And one of the beauties of this show is that the thousands of people that will listen to this episode are wanting the journey that you're describing. They're wanting the best for their kids, and they're wanting to have, and they are having, right, the proper, we'll say, development structure about this being life and not just hockey. I don't think anyone's coming to our show for that quick tip on how to do a Michigan better in the third period. I think they're coming for the reasons you just mentioned. So I want to thank you for being here again and sharing your knowledge, man, because that's what this community is all about.
No problem. It was great. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. All right, gang. Remember, you can email us your questions, your comments, your thoughts. We get a lot of them. team@ourkidsplayhockey.com, or click the link accompanying this episode in the description. You can text to us. We can text you back. But for Patrick Rissmiller, for Mike Benelli, Christie Casciano Burns, I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Take care. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.